Thank you everybody for coming, and thank you for the wait, because just getting the slides organised. So yeah, and bear with me because I'm not very used to doing presentations and talks, but I'll try and talk my way through it. So I have a company called Palava, and we've been going for about 15 years. And I started with children's wear and then progressed into women's wear when I actually keep the company going that way, but also that there was a bit of a bigger demand and it was easier. But lots of printed textiles, basically, all my own prints, and then from that sort of the knitwear's grown. And then we, about 5 years ago, started making some British knitwear. I was really interested and intrigued why we were wasting this amazing material, and interested in why we weren't using it more. And you'd think it would be quite easy, but it was quite a struggle. So we started by trying to find the right material, or trying to find someone who would spin it for us, and trying to follow the whole sort of process through. But just trying to get a cardigan made was quite hard work. And lots of the knitters won't use British wool. And so there's a whole kind of reinvention of having to learn, and I'm really glad that we're further on with the British wool story than we were 5 years ago. It feels like a vast improvement. So, and it just seemed really strange that we were wasting this amazing material, because it's on our doorstep, it's here. We should be thinking more locally. We should be thinking more in terms of how we use what we have and our natural resources. So, so the British wool story is kind of carried on. And then 2 or 3 years ago, I sort of started re-evaluating my own company and what we're doing and why we're doing it. And the whole thing of like, why are we making more clothes when the world is full of clothes already? What's the point? And if I'm not doing something that is more than above and beyond the point of making clothes, then I don't see why I'm here as a company. So I started asking myself some questions, like what if we could produce clothes super locally or within 50 miles? What happens if we use this company to support small mills that are here in the UK? What happens if we use this as a really positive direction? So there were about 7 or 8 what-if questions that kind of changed my perspective. And I went about trying to answer some of those questions. And this slide here is a bit of some of them. So we have a problem in the fact that we overmade and overconsume without the thought of the world that we live in. And that's just been one thing that the clothing world we're surrounded by. And so I had some solutions here. So one of my sort of solutions is we should be reusing more materials. We should be reusing what we have already. And another one is to recycle. So the things that we can't reuse, why are we not recycling more? And the third one is about how we make. So how do we produce things? And at the moment, my company works on a sort of normal system of we make for wholesale and we make for retail. So we're really looking at like 6 to 9 months in advance in terms of where we start the production to where we finish it. And I sort of wanted to start asking, well, what happens if we did that differently? And what happens if we wanted to make to order? What would that look like, and how would we make that work? Because in terms of lots of companies that make things, that's a kind of suicide trip. And then how do we share that knowledge, and how do we go about learning more? Because if we're just keeping all of that knowledge and all that learning to ourselves, then maybe it's not a great advantage. More people can benefit if we're able to share it. So that's where this crazy grey building came in, and I thought about, well, if we want to do all of this, we're going to need somewhere to grow. So we have a little shop in King's Cross, just 10 minutes down the road. And we have our studio there at the back, and we have our shop at the front, but it's all very little. And as a lot of you know, London's very expensive, so every square metre has to count. So in Yorkshire, you can get a property that's got grey pebble dash on it and is right next to a pig farm, and it's a little bit more affordable than London. So we're very fortunate to be really based in a beautiful part of North Yorkshire, and that's where my warehouse is. And so this building was kind of opposite, and I've been looking at it for a few years thinking, oh, maybe we could do something, but it seemed like a big jump. Anyway, so these were some of the sort of vision of what I was thinking, is like make to order and reduce overproduction. Every scrap, so every part from the process of what we make hopefully gets recycled. So with making in the UK, we make a lot of our garments in the UK. You see all the waste all the way through. So from the cutting process, there's waste. From the beginning process, when you print the fabric, there's waste. And there's waste when it comes to people's end of use. So the idea was to build a micro factory in the UK. That was my thought. And then I only want to use natural fibres, so I only want cotton, linen, and wool. And I want to create a community through workshops and sharing. And I want to make clothing that lasts longer than a person's lifetime. So those were my aims. And and the slides are a little bit mixed up, but this is the hatchery about this time last year. So we had to put a new roof on it because there was water coming through, and at the same time we put the solar panels, and my dad and I were mending all the windows. So these ones weren't mendable, but on the rest of the building we fixed every single window by cutting bits out and putting new bits in. Because each window was about £2,500. So this is the other side of the building. And it was very grey and very sorry for itself, so it seemed like a splash of red paint was a good idea. And the idea is to split the building in half. So originally I was thinking, oh, maybe I could sell half. If it all goes wrong, I can sell half and it'll be all right. But we've been thinking about this half being a CIC, so a community-led business, which will then be all about community and workshops. And also the back part here is not huge, but it's enough for a little dye garden. So we've been growing some natural dyes, hopefully for next year to be able to do some experiments. And then one of the things that we did was we got a Creative Catalyst grant last year, which was a little bit of money towards the beginning of this, which allowed us to work specifically on a project that was about taking old wool blankets and making them into something new. So that was part of one of my aims. And really specifically looking at the blankets that would have been on our beds, that now we use duvets, but these would have been in every day. And then teaming them up with the prints and the scraps that we have left from our production. And here's another picture of, it's a bit blurred this one, but them putting in the new windows. So it started to look completely different once they started to put the windows in. And this is Emily, so with the Creative Catalyst, it was the beginning of setting up our micro factory, so we started to be able to employ one person to be able to stitch and sew and to be able to learn how to, the beginning bit of taking scraps that we already had and making them into something new. So it included these little jackets, which I've talked about, but also things like pajamas, also things that were kind of made from the smaller scraps. And then, we also do these little fabric bundle scraps for people who want to stitch and make at home. So I'm really hoping that we'll be able to grow that more like flat pack clothing where people can buy things and buy the cloth and make at home. And this was going to visit the Secret Diary, who is a great person who learning all about these natural dyes. And this is a picture of John. A lot of you might be familiar with John, I think, probably. He's quite a character, and he's based in Huddersfield. So he basically takes wool or materials or clothing that's end of life, and he will shred it through a machine that looks like a giant brush, split the fibers, and then from that be able to create a new fabric. So he likes working with splitting colours out, so he's done a lot of work with Salvation Army where you go for specific colours, and that way you don't have to re-dye the fabric, because what you get out is maybe a mix of like all your lovely red colours there. They would all kind of go into kind of melange, or I think that's the word, isn't it? Yeah? And then come out as something that's kind of one colour. But with us, we're really interested in there's two things. So the wool blanket project, we had some waste that was left over. So we started working with that and the wool. But long term, what I'm really working on is taking the cotton scraps and mixing that with the wool, using the wool as the carrier fibre to be able to carry the cotton, because we still don't really have a way of recycling cotton in the UK. And I think it's just coming where they're able to chemically recycle it, but we're not doing it in this way where we're shredding the fibre and turning it into a new one. So wool, because of its properties here, is able to work as a carrier fibre, so it's really strong. But we wanted to work with local wool, so that's been a bit of a challenge. And so again, the whole British wool thing, and John's used to using fibres off the factory floor, but they're not necessarily UK. Oh, I think that's the only slide. So, I mean, I think for me, I'm just really interested in how we push ourselves to do more than we think we can. And if we're going to make clothes, how do we make them to the best of our ability? And how do we look at all of those things? So this journey has taken me so many places. I sort of didn't come from a fashion or clothing background, so there's always so much to learn. And the products that we make has really been pushed by the direction of what I'm capable with, but also what we want to do through these projects. And the hatchery is just a really exciting way of being able to explore some of those, because we print a lot of our own fabric. Then buying the digital printer was the first thing that we did, and learning how to use that. And then learning how we then make that into a super slick process, so that we can take the cloth right through from being the fabric to being the end product, and to be able to take the consumer on that journey. So it's taken me to Manchester to have my body scanned by somebody to look at how we really help the fit of clothing, because you learn also psychology-wise how clothes fit us, and what we choose to wear really has a big impact on maybe how we feel going to the office that day, or how we feel in ourselves. And a lot of people put up with clothes that don't fit very well. So learning from this, it's sort of like bodies are so different, and even within the sizes of 8, 10, 12, 14, we're so different. Mm-hmm. And then also it's taken me to go and visit a hydroponic cotton grower in Nottingham as well. So learning that maybe there's a better way of doing things always. So with the cotton, he's learning to grow it instead of vegetables, growing cotton, which is just incredible, because it means that then it produces cotton with 10% of the amount of water it would take to grow. And you can grow all year round, because you're growing it in a completely different condition. And possibly then we can put the spinning and the facilities to make a cotton fabric all right next to each other. So it's really like thinking about the future is kind of really exciting. And I'm excited about how technology can maybe help us get there, and using these old techniques with the new techniques, using old materials and using new technology to make something really that's going to make us more robust for the fashion industry in the future. Thank you.
Has anyone got any questions? Oh,
You have some samples. I have a quick question. You have some samples over there. What are those?
Oh, I do. I brought some samples. So we were talking. I just brought samples from John, basically. So this is post-consumer waste from people that have overboiled their wool jumpers, I imagine, that have ended up basically not having a second life because somebody's cooked it too hot. And John will take this and shred it into this fibre that then becomes something like this. So that's lots of green jumpers all put together. And this was our waste from the wool blanket project, so lots of different little colours in there. And it's kind of nice, what's nice about wool and some of those tweeds is the more you look at them, you start to see all of these flecks of colour and the beauty in it. And so this is the same once it's been through the carding machine and made into its next process. So that's that one and that one are the same. Sorry, the speaker, I'm not very. And this one is our wool blanket with John's waste here put together. So it's kind of like you look at that and there's nothing to it, but actually it's been a really fascinating journey already.
Thank you.
I think it's less of a question and just more of a congratulations. What an incredible thing you're doing. Oops. We do a project in MA called the Makers Camp where we get students to look at collectives, working together, new ecosystems, which is exactly this kind of thing, which is really interesting, amazing. So it'd be great, to have you talk to that and come and talk to the students about how, because I think it's quite difficult to get designers and a lot of our students to think about working in these kind of collective ways with machinists and textile people, weavers, embroidery, whatever it is, knitters, working with garment makers. And the other thing with that, we did a project with Barbara a few years ago. We were trying to support them on getting new machinists because their youngest machinist was 40. And I think this goes across all of our manufacturing. We're not getting young people that are wanting to sew anymore or make anymore. We had this conversation in one of our panels yesterday. And I see that's kind of what you're setting up, this fantastic small making space. And I think myself and some colleagues are working on trying to get more sewing groups established around Pan-UK. I'm just wondering how easy you found it to get machinists and people to actually work in these spaces, or whether it's something that you're still working on?
I think it's really difficult because we're at the beginning of something. So I think that's kind of exciting for people in one way that they can see something happening. And it's another one that you're not quite at the stage where something's set up and easy for someone to step into. So we had Emily work for us for about 9 months, and then she's gone back to a recycling centre, which is a little bit closer for her. And it was great to have her for that short time. But even her skills were quite good, but they weren't what they should be or what we really, really need. And then looking to recruit again, we've really struggled. So I feel in some ways we're back to square one and we've got to learn again. So in January, we start with 2 girls that are willing to do an apprenticeship with us for 18 months. So they'll start their apprenticeship in January. And training 2 girls together and Zoe, who already works for us, will mean that we have a little hub, a little community. And I think it is all about community, isn't it? And it's all about people feeling supported in that and feeling like they're growing something and understanding the point of it.
Definitely. And I think it's these kind of systems that we're trying to get our students to look at here with working together across fashion, textiles, product, now architecture. And I think it's not easy. It's not easy getting young people into these schools. We had this conversation yesterday again, how important it is for us, all of us in the industry, to work with schools, younger people. I think we need more skills centres. We have skills centres for the building industry, for example, for catering, hospitality, but we don't seem to have skills centres for textiles and making of manufacturing of fabric and sewing skills. So I think that's something that these kind of projects that we're doing, and with you setting up these kind of new systems and collectives, it's great. It's almost going back 100 years, probably further, isn't it, as to how our industry started. So it's really exciting to see a lot of these spaces start up. And I think the way that we can help each other is by having conversations together and really build these projects pan-UK and really get our students to understand them as well.
And I think for me, there's been a lot of pressure as a company, or it's seen the only way for a company to go is to keep going up, flying the aeroplane. And maybe we don't need that. We don't need to be massive. I don't want to be massive.
No.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a trend going, and like young designers just not wanting to grow. And I think that the thing that's exciting for me to hear you talk is that it feels like something starting that it doesn't have to be this sort of like endless like sort of ricochet of constant growth. Most fashion students want to secure design jobs, and they want to be able to have a job that they can live with, and actually do what they train to do. But if that could be at a small level that they could sustain their lives, I'm sure that's like, there's so many creative, interesting people that would want to do those jobs. So I think it's just a start, so they can just do it and just get involved.
Amazing.
Well, thank you for all your enthusiasm.
Well, thank you and well done.